Hey guys, welcome to Something Like Therapy. For today's episode, we are super excited for this one. It is a topic that we hold very close to our hearts. We are talking about our deconversion and everything that's come along with it. So please join us and hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, welcome to our third episode. I can't believe we made it through the last two. We thank you guys for joining us. We are super excited to talk about a very sensitive topic for us, but I kind of feel like this is going to be a good way to kind of transition into many more topics that we want to talk about. This particular topic for me is very, very close to my heart and something I'm very passionate about. So,
Yeah, I remember. When we were talking about doing a podcast and stuff, this was like an area or a topic that we knew for sure we would be discussing because it's important. It's like a huge aspect and thing that's going on in our lives that has been going on and continues to go on. So this episode has definitely been circled in our calendar as soon as we started making these topics calendar.
definitely, definitely. It is something that I think is going to give us the freedom to talk about many more topics. And I kind of feel that if we didn't do this in our earlier episodes or podcast, it was going to cause a lot of hesitation and we weren't going to be able to speak freely, at least for myself. I wasn't going to be able to speak freely on a lot of things that I believe in or my points of view. So this is why I kind of just want to get this one out of the way because it's just I kind of feel like it's the elephant in the room with like a lot of different people that know us and have seen our journey, especially these last 3 years. They see how much we've changed and the different ways we've, I guess, evolved. I don't know. Would that be the word, evolved?
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime that you step back to kind of analyze or just inspect where you're at in life, what you've been doing, how you've been thinking, and then making a conscious decision to go a different way based on what you've come to find out, that's growth. Some people might not look at it like that, at least not with this area or this topic. They may say it's the opposite of growth. It may
Regressed.
be like, regression. But yeah, and I mean, you can obviously we've gone now. We haven't said what we're going to be talking about, but you kind of got it from the title of today's episode. Where Jess and I are going to be discussing our deconversion journey that we've kind of been on. Us kind of stepping back from Christianity, stepping back from religion, and that's kind of where we wanted to go today, and just sharing with you guys our experience over the last years of how we became involved with the church, some of our experience while we were there, and the kind of uphill battle, I guess you can say, of getting out, which we are continuing to go through. So that's what we wanted to share with you today.
Yeah, so I want to start with a little bit of my background and try to keep it as short as possible. But I was actually raised in a Catholic church, Catholic home. So I went through the whole thing, the baptism, the first communion, catechism. I think that's what it's called, right? So I did the whole thing, mostly because of my grandma. That's, she was the one that is still very devout Catholic, and she's big on traditions, which if you know anyone that's Catholic, or if you're Catholic yourself, you know they're big on tradition and a lot of ritualistic type of, you know, like ceremonies and stuff like that. So I was raised Catholic. And at a very young age, my mom actually just didn't agree with a lot of their practices and started turning to Christianity. So we, you know, I was very young, so of course you know, just not that I had a choice, but I went along with it. And very soon after that, we started going to a very conservative church, and it was I can't even remember what it's called right now. But it was definitely conservative, and they were very, very strict. So I was baptized very early, and, you know, whatever, kind of followed the rules, because my mom, you know, she was trying to do, to her, she was teaching us what she thought was best for us. So fast forward, when I turned 18, got married, completely left the church, but that still stuck with me. Everything that I learned stuck with me for a very long time. And then again, fast forward, met Derek, and just a lot of things started to kind of change. And this had more to do because of Derek's just his view on religion. And yeah, so go ahead.
I mean, with me, it's the kind of the opposite there in the sense that, you know, Jess grew up in a home, you know, a religious home, and where my story is, I didn't have religion, at least the church, in my home. Now, I'm not going to say that my parents were atheists in any way. They grew up, you know, Catholic. We're Mexican, so I think for the most part, 99.9% of Mexicans grew up, you know, in being Catholic. But they, you know, my family wasn't very religious in any way. We I would even say my mom went as far as, even I remember as a young child, kind of explaining to me how, you know, her view on religion is we don't go to church because church is not necessary. Going to a church is not necessary. Having a relationship with God is the most important thing, which, you know, fast forwarding to now is like, I love my mom so much for installing that or instilling that in me, because that's my belief now. So yeah, I grew up in a home that didn't even have a Bible, never went to church. The only really experience I had with church was with like my uncle, who was a pastor. I used to visit my cousins, you know, every summer as a kid, and would go up to their ranch and stay and go to church every Sunday with them. My aunt and him and my uncle, you know, sang in the worship band. He was the lead pastor, you know, all of that. So that was my only real kind of connection with church. And my mom, you know, she didn't say anything about me, you know, doing that, or, you know, there was no tension between her and my uncle in regards to, you know, making me go through that, or I can't think of, what is it?
Exposing?
Exposing,
Yeah.
gosh, exposing that to me. But yeah, so that's kind of just where I came from, you know, and growing up, you know, as a teenager and into my 20s, I kind of took that way of thinking like how my mom had, where, you know, any type of organized religion was almost bad, because it's like it's taking away from what real connection with God is, and the Bible just, you know, a cool book, but not really something to live your, you know, base your life on. So that was my, you know, religious background. And then, you know, fast forwarding to meeting Jessica, our beginning years, we really weren't religious in any way. And, you know, we kind of just lived a normal, I guess, secular life, as you can say.
Yeah. And most definitely, you know, and it's funny because I guess you can say we live, you know, what people would consider a normal life with, and, but for me, it actually wasn't very normal. I like I said, very young, it was installed in me that I had to go to church, and without church, you would eventually fall astray, and eventually you would fall back into sin. So all of that was like really deeply rooted in me, and it was really trying to make its way up. I was actually shown the complete opposite, that you needed church, you needed that structure, you needed that accountability, that discipline. Knowing that you were going to be with like minded individuals was only going to strengthen your faith. And I actually, one thing I want to say, I really admired my mom because she left the Catholic Church to go into Christianity, and we were actually the only like the only Christian believers in our family. Everybody else was Catholic. So I thought my mom was a total badass for like leaving and just saying like, I don't believe in that crap. Whatever the hell you guys are doing and all that weird crap, like I'm not doing that. I'm finding, God for myself. Like whatever it is that I feel like who God really is, I'm going to go in and find him. And I really admired my mom. And I think that's something that now that I think back on it, I think that's something that really drew me to Christianity because it was different. And they were, even though Christianity seemed so much more demanding than, I guess it depends. It depends because the Catholics that I was exposed to weren't the most devout Catholics, other than like my grandma, and a couple of my aunts, but they were still living the life they wanted to live, and Christianity was to me, what I saw was about true change, like true transformation, and that really drew me to Christianity. So, and again, seeing my mom take such a like leap of faith and just go towards what she felt was right, really was, to me, I wanted to be that too. So,
Yeah. And I think too, like, and we've discussed this before, when we did start, getting into church, I think the one thing that I always at least recognize is that with, like you mentioned, with Catholics, the people think of like, devout Catholics. It's very, very structured. You have to get baptized at this age. You have to go to catechism. You have to have your first communion. Even just the every Sunday or the days they go to mass. Very ritualistic. The priest comes out, followed by the altar boys. The altar boys do the candles and all of that. They sing certain
20 Hail Marys.
yeah. Then the prayer structure and all of it is very. It's almost like the military of religion. And I remember a friend I had who her mom was very Catholic. I remember her saying that, and I told you that before. Like, oh, Christians are they're just weak Catholics. It's like, oh my gosh, like you guys are all on the same team, right? It doesn't really seem like it, but yeah. So that was one thing where when we did start getting into choosing a religion or kind of going into Christianity, where I was like, at least with Christianity, it's not so ritualistic and militarized. Like it's very welcoming. It's very, hey, we're all here, we're all together, love one another, and it's very accepting and kumbaya. And I think that's one of the things that drew us in and draws in a lot of people. So
I think Christianity has mastered, and I say mastered because they know exactly what people need and what they crave for, and that is community, relationship. They are great at creating these clubs or, well, ministries. That's what it is. Ministries, and they have a ministry for everything and everyone. I mean, the last church we were attending, and that's the one that we attended the longest, they had the marriage ministry, they had the youth ministry, they had empty nesters, like the retirement people. I mean, they had everything that you can think of. Special needs ministry. I don't know if I already said that, but they had anything and everything that you feel like, oh, if you're sitting down, sitting at home one day and you're like, man, I wish I can find like-minded people that are going through what I'm going through. Go and check out their list, and you're gonna find something. You're gonna find something that is just exactly what you need, right? So
And if you try to explain that, and again, this I'm not going to go into like we're right and people are wrong, but I'm just saying that the thought in which, because I've encountered people that we are and we're friends with, having the same conversations. But it's like if you try to explain that to someone that the church is a business, and those people will understand that businesses like fast food and cars and whatever it is, they get, they data mine and they get people's interests and likes from their phones and going on their computer and what they're searching and things, and then they will present to you offers of like, hey, you kind of were looking at this, maybe you're interested in this here, because they're trying to get to know someone so that they can offer them the right things. That's exactly what a church does, because if you look at it like that they're doing the same thing. But those people will look at it like, oh yeah, I believe that those businesses do that stuff, but a church doesn't do that stuff, because they would never just try to like categorize someone and put them into present them with something that they know that they're going to want.
I don't care how they say it or how they want to present it, but it's marketing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really comes down to what does the consumer need, and how do we get that to them, and how do we provide that for them, because the whole goal is that it's kind of like Costco. Like, you go there because you're gonna find everything you need, like from furniture to clothes to toilet paper to your groceries. I mean, your auto, like absolutely everything that you can possibly ever need at any stage or point of your life, you're gonna find it at Costco. So that's kind of what church wants to do, right? So, but I don't want to go straight into like bashing the church. I want to talk about what got us there. What finally brought us back to opening our hearts and having some faith in these groups of people that we met in the church, in God. Um, and I'm just gonna because I do want to talk about this topic on another episode. I'm not gonna go into details of what really led me to opening my heart up again to Christianity and church and whatnot. But so really quickly, I went through a really tough season in my life, or phase in my life, where I had a complete mental breakdown. There's no other way to put it. Was under a lot of stress. Our kids were very young. They were just had been diagnosed maybe a couple years before. We were going through the teenage years with our oldest, which he was going through his own, just his own stuff. And we just had a very rough season. So I had a mental breakdown pretty much. And I was desperate. I was desperate for relief. I was desperate for just hope. And I knew that I remember when my mom was going through a very tough, season in her life, she ran to church. And I said, okay, maybe that'll work for me. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe because I've turned away from it for so long, like this is God calling me back to finally heal my heart. So it was really a desperate move. And I'm not ashamed of that, because I do feel that a lot of healing did happen, while we were going through what we were going through. There was a lot of things that I learned about myself, that I discovered about myself, because I was in a vulnerable position, and I allowed myself to be open. So I actually went first, and then eventually my husband followed. And that was pretty interesting, because honestly, I knew it was completely foreign to him. I knew that he was not in any way comfortable with even talking about religion or God or anything like that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely, for sure. I mean, I even, growing up, it was like sort of how everyone looks at the Jehovah's Witness that come knocking on your door at 6 a.m. I looked at anyone that was a part of any religion like that. Like, I didn't go around making fun or criticizing or saying, you're dumb. I just, if someone was like, yeah, I'm really big into the church, or I was like, oh, well, that's cool, well, whatever. So like, yeah, anything that involved going to church, the Bible, religion, it just didn't interest me. And I'm not gonna lie, like I maybe did have a slight bias to be like, if someone was like, yeah, like I go to church, it's sort of like, okay, that's fine, but oh man, like I didn't think you were one of them. So yeah, when Jessica was having her, the kind of that dark time, and she mentioned she had brought up, church to me, I did the good husband thing of like, okay, that's if you want to do that, then you do that. And there was never a time where I was going to tell her, no, don't go do that. Where that's not what this marriage or this family is about. Like, no matter what she's going to do, I'm going to support her. So, but yeah, definitely her bringing that up was kind of like a, oh no, here we go type time.
And I remember the first time that I decided to actually, because this is how desperate I was. My mental health was so bad, and I was just like, I don't care. I don't care if he doesn't go with me. I don't care if I have to go by myself. Like, I didn't even take the kids with me. But I got ready and I just went, and I was in such a place and point in my life where I needed to do anything to get relief of what I was going through. And I remember sitting at church and just like, praying, you know, like God, just show my husband that, I need him by my side, and just thinking that this was just going to be such a big step for our family and where we were going to be, in the years to come together, and having all of us be there together. And, I mean, I will say that it was a prayer that did happen, that we did get to see. Um, and there were some beautiful, beautiful moments and times that I wouldn't change for the world that we experienced. But it also came with the price, and there was a lot of things that happened in between all of those beautiful moments, and that really kind of started to develop this cloud over Christianity and religion, organized religion, and these groups that were at one point so supportive now were demanding. So it changed. It took about, I want to say, about a year when we started to kind of see things start turning a little bit. And but by that point we were pretty deep in to church and ministry. um I would say we were even like trying to recruit some friends, and we were, you know
Well, yeah, I mean, you're definitely, and that's just a whole, again, a whole other topic where uh, you're recruiting because that is a part of the religion. We are disciples, so you don't call it recruiting in church; you call it discipleship and
yeah.
making disciples. So, yeah, we were definitely, you know, kind of getting our footing at first, figuring out the dynamics of it in the sense of like who's who in the church and how you're supposed to kind of be and what you're supposed to kind of do, and kind of the image, which anyone that's been to church or is used to go to church knows that there is an image that you need to kind of have or that they try to promote. And so, again, that first year, year and a half, that's kind of what we were doing. It's just really, like I said, understanding it all, and then little by little, more and more, just because of the personalities that Jess and I have, which was quickly identified by people in the church. We began to dive a little bit deeper and get a little bit more involved in certain ministries and kind of with I wouldn't say leadership. We weren't leaders, so we never really were leaders there, but just kind of under the eye of some of the pastors and things like that. So as more time went on, we kind of just got more and more deep into starting that path toward leadership there.
Well, actually, we did lead a couple of groups because we started a life group, and that was something that we led in our home, and then also we did try to do it on the church campus, but there was just a lot of different things going on, so we weren't able to keep that up there. But we did actually lead
Yeah.
the life groups, and that kind of started to show us a little bit what like church leadership really looked like, and what all the boxes you needed to check off in order to be considered to be a leader, or even just someone that was like someone that was someone in the church, so if you were any type of influence in the church, like you had to check a lot of boxes before you were considered at all, which I understand, because people are looking, I wouldn't say looking up to you, but people are looking at you as a kind of like a resource, or like a source where this person, like for example, we were leading the special needs families group, so we were looked at as somebody that if we're struggling with our child, or something's happening in our marriage, like anything that had to do with special needs, like people could reach out to us and we could offer some form of support or help. And so I understand why they want you to have certain knowledge of scripture, or whatever it is they feel that you need to lead people. It's understandable why you need to check those boxes. Yeah. What I had a problem with was that even if you, let's say you check those boxes and now you have an idea that you want to share, let's say something that is out of the box, and you want to, that this is helpful, because obviously for us, we were, we have special needs kids, and we have experience with certain situations or things that we've gone through, and now we want to bring in our own little kind of our own little spice to it. If it wasn't on their script, they wanted nothing to do with it. So now it was just very, very micromanaged. It was very almost scripted. You actually were given this this handbook, or this whatever script, I guess there's no other way to call it, but this is what you have to go off of, and this is a topic that the whole entire church, no matter what your life group was about, this is what you talked about. And it was mostly based on the whatever that sermon was, or whatever series that they were doing. So really, I thought it was funny, because I thought, well, here's all these groups, and they're all, for different points of your life, or whatever it is that you're going through. Like, you get to kind of pick the group that you want to be part of, but yet they're all talking about the same thing. So then what's the freaking point? And it's an extension of the sermon. So then what is the point? They're not really personalized for your particular group that you picked. They were scripted.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said. I think the whole concept behind these life groups, or whatever you want to call them, little mini ministries, is exactly what we said. It's the church figuring out, okay, how do we get people to get more involved? How do we make it more welcoming for them? If we can make a group where now you're not just going to church, you're going to a group that specializes in special needs. Hey, I have
Mm-hmm.
special needs children. You're going to a group of empty nesters. Hey, I'm an empty nester. I can relate to these people, or whatever it is, young adults. Like, you're going to a specialized group where now that draws them in more. And I don't say this because it's my opinion. Remember, I told you I read on the, I always forget his name, the Harvest, the guy that does Harvest,
Oh man.
the guy that started that whole thing.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Anyways, I read a thing on on him in regards to how he got started and how he was a young pastor and trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
how to do it, and then he moved over to from, I forgot where he's from, but anyways, he went to Orange County and he started that whole church, which is now one of the largest churches, I would say, probably in the world. I mean, definitely in the United States. And
Greg
he
Laurie.
Greg Laurie, there you
Yeah.
go. And he did it by literally coming up with the idea of life groups. Like,
Yeah.
okay, how do we make it to where we need to not just make it so where people come to church and then they just have church on Sunday, and then they leave church and then they're not involved in it anymore. We need to get them involved Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all about the church. We need to make more groups. We need to make these small groups so that people can now meet in homes and then discuss what we at the church want them to be discussing. Now, I totally get that. If you read the Bible, in Acts, it talks about that's what true Christians did. You met in homes and you were about one another, and hey, that is great. But when you have something like a life group, like Jess said, it's like, no, meet separately, just in a small group. But here's the script that you guys talk about. Here's the discussion topics. Go off of what pastor talked about on Sunday and kind of incorporate that into your group. So then we're not really discussing our small group. It's just meeting in a smaller group, talking about what the pastor already
Exactly.
discussed. So
And we were warned many times. We were like
yeah.
warned because a particular pastor that overlooked all the life groups, he was on my ass. Like, he was on my ass. I don't know what his freaking problem was,
But in
but
a very
he,
passive aggressive
oh my
way, of
god,
course.
I'm just gonna give a little freaking warning here. There's probably gonna be some bad words dropped because it's just that's how I feel about this particular individual. God bless him. But okay, so they were, what one thing I noticed is that it was all these groups were just like hook bait. It was just a way to like draw you in for you to feel comfortable, for you to feel understood. But very much these people or this particular leader, and I mean, now that I like look at it and I think back on it, it's like, well, it might have been him, but it comes from the top. It comes from not even just the main pastor in our church, which he was kind of like a top dog in all of the First Assemblies, like whole freaking whatever the hell it's called. I don't know what they consider themselves, organization, or I don't know. Anyways, it comes from whoever creates this curriculum or whoever creates this, just schedule and programming. Like, that's where it comes from. So I look at it now and I think, like, man, it was such a great way to get people in, but making sure that they stay on, like, they stay in line. They do not, go astray in any way from what you are being taught. And honestly, the program they've created to program you, and we started to little by little see that. And exactly like you said, the more they got you into church, the more that you were going to get used to that type of movement and flow and just how their organization worked, and the more, and I remember thinking when we first went, and the first thing that we attended was a marriage ministry, and we were just like, oh my god, this is amazing. And we learned, I will say though, we learned a lot about relationships, and we learned a lot about marriage. And for that, like, I will always hold that close to my heart. But I also know that there was a lot of shutting women down. Or it was a lot of like teaching you to be submissive and teaching you that you needed to be a good wife and just listen to your husband and support your husband. And yeah, of course they taught about women, the women also, men also being supportive to the wife, but it was very much about women submitting. And because there was a lot of strong-minded women there, I could tell they really, really pushed that. So,
Well, yeah,
and,
just really quick, they go into roles, how,
yeah,
God has designed, he made a man for a certain reason, he made a woman for a certain reason. Men have their roles, their responsibilities, just like women have them. We coexist by, working with each other. However, women should not be doing man roles, and men should not be doing women roles and
mm-hmm.
responsibilities. So it's, I mean, when you're there and you're hearing it, it begins to like make sense. And like if you follow how God intended it to work, that's when you have harmony, and that's when things work great, and you kind of begin to soak that up. But then when you just like press pause really quick and step back, you're kind of like, wait. So what am I learning? What am I believing in here? So
It
um,
happens very slowly though.
that yeah, exactly.
Super slow.
I think the best brainwashing, and I know that's a taboo word to use, but it is what it is. The best brainwashing is little by little. You don't just right
Mm-hmm.
away go and, I mean, even when it's someone like, you talk about people that groom, people like, pedophiles that groom young kids,
Yeah.
and in no way am I comparing the church to pedophiles, but I'm just saying, like, when people groom younger kids, they don't just right away say like, I'm this and you listen to me. Like, they befriend them, they gain their trust, they get on their side, they want to make them feel comfortable, and then they little by little start dropping like, yeah, but if you do this or you believe this and you say this, and then it becomes like, it makes the person feel like they're making the decision, they're making the choice,
Yeah.
but really that seed has already been planted. And maybe
I will say though, in the beginning though, you are a very willing participant because for
yeah.
me, I mean, at least I'll speak for myself. I was desperate for help and guidance.
But who do they kind of prey on?
Right. And no, and yeah, that's what I was going to say. Well, that even though I was a willing participant in the beginning, when my husband and I walked in there, immediately the marriage ministry pastors were drawn to us. And maybe they saw the yes on our big freaking forehead. I don't freaking know, but they saw we were yes people and that I don't know. I think it was maybe the desperation in us, or at least for me, that I was just like, I'll listen to anything and everything that you have to say. But I do agree. I agree that it had a lot to do with them knowing exactly the type of people that walk into their church on the weekly basis, and know that most likely what brings them there is their vulnerability and probably some form of brokenness, whether it could be addiction, whether it's loss, um, you know, divorce, whatever. It's usually something not good that brings you to a church door.
Yeah.
So they are very much aware of that. So, but
And definitely
yeah,
like a really quick, like Jess said, like she was in a bad place, and that's kind of what got her to go. I'll even, it wasn't just her. Like she did mention our son at that time was 14,
about
15.
yeah, he was about
He was
14.
in high school, so yeah, 14,
Yeah.
15. But that's when he kind of started his uphill battle through his teenage years. And there was us being a blended family, which we kind of mentioned, that's something we do want to talk about. There was a lot of ups and downs with mine's and his relationship. There was ups and downs with mine's and Jessica's relationship in the beginning. So at that time, it was just like, not only was she kind of going through a dark phase, but we had kind of been in a hole where we knew our family needed a shakeup. We knew we needed something. And that's kind of what led me to begin going with Jess, knowing that like, hey, I want to be there for my wife, but deep in my heart, I know I need something. I'm searching for something. And
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of people, and that's a lot of people, how they end up on the church's doorstep is like, who am I? What have I done with my life? Or, look at all the things I've done. I need to really just start new, start afresh. Who can offer me that? And then when they look up, it's the big huge hand of the church saying, "Follow me. I have the answers. God will forgive." And that's kind of like I mentioned. It's a really harsh way to say it, but that's kind of who the church preys on, because there's a lot of people in need. How many people are out there struggling for identity? Who am I? What does it all mean? And that's who the church really looks for. And like Jess said, pastors and people in church were drawn to us when we went there because, one, I think that's just our personality. At least I'm going to speak for myself and say I'm a yes person, and I want to please. I will always want to please. So I will tell you what you want to hear. I will do what you want me to do, and I will agree with you because I want to please. So that's the exact kind of couple or people that a church is looking for, because then they can use you to kind of get other people to come in and be the talkative person. So and I do want to say, like, before we continue on with some of the stuff that we begin to notice, is that we did need the help, and the church did give us the help. So I'll never take that away from them. Like Jess mentioned, like I have a lot of very, very good memories of, especially or of the marriage ministry, of learning a lot of things, learning just my relationship with Jess, relationship with my sons, being a man, being a father. A lot of that came from the marriage ministry, and I'll always hold that close to my heart. So the church doesn't lie in the sense they will give you that, but what they ultimately are giving you is something to hang on to, something to.
It's just enough.
Yeah, it gives you purpose, it gives you meaning, and that's kind of what we're searching for. But what people fail to recognize and see is that the meaning and purpose that they're giving you isn't the whole thing. It's their meaning, it's their purpose. If someone gives you something that belongs to them, it still belongs to them, and it's what they created, and it's what they are telling you is right. It doesn't mean it is what it is, and it's the ultimate thing. But people are so desperate and so needy that they will cling on to anything. So like I said, what the church was, it did help us, but throughout the years that we were there, kind of seeing how things go, we realized it wasn't the end all be all of what your life should be.
Yeah. And like I said, they give you just enough to keep you kind of coming back, and they create almost kind of like this little mystery it's like watching a movie, and it just, the ending is just a big like cliffhanger, and you're just like, oh man, like what happened? Like I want to know what happens. And that's kind of what they do. They keep you coming back. And
well, it's like we always say that their biggest thing is, and it's they disguise it behind honoring and worshiping God. You have the "He" before "I" bumper stickers on so many cars. It's like worship and honors something, but you are nothing. I mean, there literally is. I don't know what is it, 3:30? I forgot which one, where it's like he must be greater before. Or,
I must
I must be less so that he can become
so
greater.
He may be greater. Yeah.
Which is like, okay, there's one thing to worship God, but there's another thing to just make yourself feel like you're the lowest of the low. And what do they kind of drill you with? You are born into sin. You are not worthy, but yet he still loves you. You're not worthy. You're nothing. You're garbage. You're sinner. So it's like it's almost like being in a battered, relationship where it's just sure. Like, you're like, just talk down to someone, but don't worry, I'm here. Like, I'm going to hit you and I'm going to speak bad to you, but then I'll still love you and I'll still hug you. So we're still in love. And it's like that. I just truly don't believe that is the relationship that the God of the universe wants us to have with him.
Right. And I know this is going to sound like we're going to be insulting Christians or anyone that has these, beliefs or whatnot. That is not our intention. This is solely our own personal experience and the things that we began to notice and the things that just didn't fit with us. But by no means do we think that every single Christian is exactly the same.
Yeah.
We experienced a lot of good, amazing people, and some people I'm still very much friends with. And I believe that in their heart, that they, this is truly what they believe because it's really helped them in their life. And I am no one to say that that's not true. We are no one to say that their experiences are not real. I had a lot of crazy experiences while we were in church, and they were very real to me. They still are. So, but I do want to say that what we began to see, and I think it's a good point to kind of transition to that, is after being there for about a year, we were very deep in church and we began to more and more be involved in the church, the ministries. I think that's when we started school of ministry.
Mm-hmm.
You started to attend Vanguard, I
That
believe,
was
or it was
probably
a little
a
after,
little
right?
after, yeah.
Uh, but there were some things that we started to notice. We started to notice about the leadership. We started to notice about the church and the church members and how they just were able to make you feel like if you didn't weren't a somebody that participated in the church and you were just a bench filler, then you're not really walking your full potential as a believer, as a Christian. So we just went in hard. Like we went in hard into ministry. One of the things that we noticed immediately was because we have two special needs boys, and the special needs ministry wasn't very consistent. That right there is a whole topic within itself. But for some reason, the church just didn't think it was something. The special needs ministry just wasn't that important. So sometimes it was open, sometimes it wasn't. So we started to actually leave our kids behind, and we were just going to church on our own. We, because they were special needs, we couldn't really take them into the main church because it was a lot for them, and it was kind of distracting for other people because our kids have a lot of stemming issues, and so we just began to leave our kids behind. And we would drop off the kids at my mom's, and then we would go to church for about 3.5 hours every Sunday, and then on Wednesdays. And then maybe even sometimes like during the week for me was like Bible study. So more and more we started to leave our kids behind. And for some reason, just the church thought that was okay, and we were just so dedicated, and we were doing everything we needed to do regardless of what it was costing us and the time that it was costing us and the time with our kids that it was costing us. And they didn't seem to think that something was wrong with that. Um, they thought that we were real. I remember, these two so-called friends, we really don't even talk to them anymore, but they were like, oh, we know that you guys are the real deal. We knew that from the moment we saw you. And I think back now and I'm like, man, that's, what, I don't know. I don't think they meant it in that way. Maybe that's just me easily offended, but it was just almost kind of like a laugh in our face, like, oh yeah, you guys are gonna fall for this shit and you're gonna take it and you're gonna just soak in it. And we did. We really, really did. Um, so more and more we were leaving what really mattered the most to us behind. And that's something that till this day I still struggle with because I feel just a huge amount of guilt because I knew that that's something we should have never compromised. We should have never said yes to these people that are nowhere to be seen now. Um, and, you know, us just sacrificing such vital years of our boys' lives um, just for acceptance, like simply just feeling accepted. And that's when I started to kind of see that this isn't right. Um, and that led us to eventually, little by little, start to kind of pull away, but still very much stay rooted in Christianity. Like we were like, we're gonna take like the bull by the horns, and we're gonna do everything from our home, from our space, and we don't care. We don't care what it cost us, So
Yeah, and you know, one of the other things that we just noticed that always really didn't sit right was just how much, even though they don't want to say it, but there is a hierarchy, and
Mm-hmm.
again, it's whenever anything's organized, so any type of organized religion, you're going to have a hierarchy, even if you try to say you're not, or you don't have that. And, you can quickly identify that by going to any church. Who are the people, who are the top dogs here? Who are the important people? You have
Mm-hmm.
the head pastor, then you have the other pastors of the different ministries. Those are the people, and then you have your leadership council, and you have your elders, and all of this. Those are the people you want to be like. See how they are. See how they're dressed. See how they're talking. See how they come, throughout the week. You see how they interact with people. You see how they do all this stuff. That's what you should be striving to be like. They don't necessarily say that, but you can just talk to any of the couples and people there, and the ones that are in that kind of mindset, you can even hear how they like talk about those people, and like, oh well, did you hear that they did this, and do you see that they do that? And again, it's all about this image. And then you begin to find, like, you fail to remember, or realize, like, they're just people. How Jess always tells me, since I'm so infatuated with like movie stars and stuff, I like hearing the behind the scenes of how they became movie stars and all that stuff. And she's like, they're just people, right? They just eat and shit and whatever, just like us, right? But I'm just like, yeah, but they're just so cool. They're just movie stars. That's kind of how people are when in a church, where it's like, oh, but the pastor, and did you see the pastor did this and did that? And it even got, like, it became really apparent to us when, we went into church, and, we had friends there that weren't pastors, and they were just like, hey, what's up, man? But then when they become pastors, it's like, oh, well, you can't just like, hey, what's up, me now. It's like, it's kind of a
Just make sure you
pastor.
address me as
Yeah, when
pastor.
we're here on
It's
campus, you have to address me in this way because we don't want to make it seem weird. You're making it seem weird by doing that. And it's like, so
so
you
weird.
you have that, and that's kind of the dynamic of it, where it just didn't sit right. Where, why are these people on a pedestal? Like, why are
Mm-hmm.
they? Well, I guess you're not a pedestal, at a podium. Like, why did they hold a little bit higher rank? And you can see how, if one of these pastors walk by, like, everyone sits straight. It's like we're in school or something. Like, you're just a person, like. And even like they say, the Bible says, like, well, some people are chosen by God to be pastors, and some people are chosen to just keep the books. And it's like, wow, that sucks. If you're just chosen to keep the books, you never get to be the cool guy on the podium. So it's like, a lot of these things where they have a structure, and they, I just said, they mastered a way to kind of like get people to do what they want them to do, and to run it like a business. I mean, so it was a lot of those things that really just kind of took us away from, like, but like Jess said, we thought we had the answer. Like, okay, well, we know church is bad, so let's get out of the four walls, and we'll do it in the home, or we'll find something that's not so structured like a church, and we'll find another way to honor and worship and serve God, but do it in a different setting, and that should
Yeah.
be the answer. But ultimately, it kind of wasn't. So
It most definitely wasn't. And I just want to real quick, because I think we're gonna kind of be start wrapping it up here, but and the next one will definitely be our journey through home church and how that looked, and what we saw differently, and what we saw very much the same. But I just want to say that our transition out of a church into a home church was probably one of the most heartbreaking experiences that I've ever gone through. The way that we were made. This was already about year 3 into church when we finally
yeah,
decided.
about that.
Yeah, a little over 3 years. I want to say we were getting close to 4 years. Um, it was one of the most heartbreaking experiences. It took me a very long time to heal from that heartbreak, and I still have moments where I want to break down crying, because I feel that we didn't just lose church. I mean, we lost so many people. We lost so much family, what we thought was family. We were made feel as if we were a threat. We were told that we needed to delete everyone that we ever knew from the church, from the congregation, because now we were a bad influence. We were told that we never really heard from God. That if we were in any way, if it was our time to be released into something new, a new venture, then they would have been told before we would have been told. This is the extent of the manipulation. This is the extent of the control. And the frustrating part of this is that when there was a few friends that I told that this is what we experience, and we were simply told to get over it. We were simply told, well, they're just people and they're just humans. And but there is a responsibility that the church holds. There is a responsibility that the leaders hold, that if truly what you believe, that you are truly a shepherd and you're truly someone that is meant to lead these people, you hold a responsibility over these people. And if those people decide to leave, I think that the most decent thing that they can do is release them and bless them and say, like, I wish you the best. But that it was the complete opposite. We were almost kind of, we were shunned, we were shamed, almost kind of cursed. Like, and I, even the lead pastor, even though he said it in a very nice way, but he looked at me and he grinned. He's like, you'll be back. And we did come back at some point. So he wasn't wrong. He knew exactly what he was saying. But I just want to say that anyone that has ever gone through something like that, I know our experience, we didn't go too much into the things that, that we saw, just because I feel like it's not really necessary, because I think a lot of people know, you see the abuse, you see the different things. There's a couple of things that I will be talking about on the next episode, because they're very serious and I don't think that we should leave them out. But there's a lot of other things that are petty, but they still hurt. So, with all that said, if anyone has experienced any type of pain and abuse or mistreatment, I I recommend getting some professional help, because these are things you don't just get over. You don't just get over it. You don't just brush it off. It's painful. You lose a lot when you step away from church, when you step away from someone that you thought was going to be there your entire life, and all of a sudden they're just gone. And unless you are willing to submit to what they believe and what they think is right, then they really don't want having anything to do with you. So I hope that, you know, if anyone has gone through this, that you have some form of support, because it is a very, very hard thing to experience and to go through on your own. I'm glad that I, have my husband and I have you that was able to walk that with me. But I don't wish that on anyone, for sure.
Yeah, and just really quick before we do it, like Jess was kind of saying there, we know that this isn't an easy conversation. It isn't an easy topic. Like I said, we did have this topic circled on our calendar to do these episodes, but we go into it knowing that, it's going to be hard for family and friends, to hear us talk about this. I mean, they kind of already know where we're coming from. Where our intention isn't to bash anyone. Our intention isn't to say we're right, you're wrong. Our intention is just share our experience, to maybe shed some light for our family and friends that maybe are in disagreement with our decisions, to kind of show them and let them know where we're coming from, and maybe hope that it leads to a place of healing of relationships. But it is hard, and I'm sure the next episode and some of the other discussions and topics we have there will be even harder. But it is something that we know we need to talk about. And like Jess said, for anyone that is going through it or has gone through it, and if you don't, then you do truly need to seek, some sort of help, some sort of therapy with it. Find groups of people that have gone through the same thing, that have had the same kind of hurts and pains. so that you can relate and kind of heal together. But having said that, we want to thank you guys for sticking with us. This was kind of an extra, a little bit longer episode than usual, but it's just that we have a lot to talk about in this topic, and we hope to discuss more on the next episode. So
Yeah.
until then, we hope you guys have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time.